Okay. All right. So as we go ahead and get started here, I'll do a quick introduction. So I'm Aseneth Horton, and I go by Cece all the time. Actually, most of the time I go by Cece, but it's funny. So Stephanie and I met a long time ago, and I only went by Aseneth. And anyway, sometimes people are curious about that. I am currently the director for the Salt Lake City chapter of Women Who Code. And so I'm really excited to be here. I'm still fairly new in my role here, but I am really enjoying it, getting to know all kinds of amazing people. And I'm currently a full stack engineer for a company called Lashbrook out of Draper, Utah. So I travel back to Salt Lake, and I live and work virtually out of northern Idaho. So, and Aseneth, you asked the question. It's in my LinkedIn profile, Martina. I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, our conversation today, I'm actually really excited to welcome a long time friend, Connie Deianni. She's going to be talking to us about mentorship, and we'll probably venture into a few ancillary topics. For example, networking and relationship building, and a few things along those lines as well, because they all kind of go together. Connie comes from a very I'm not even sure how to describe it. We did some board service together years ago, and she currently serves for a handful of boards in Salt Lake City for both high-end financial institutions as well as secondary education. So I'm really excited to have her on, bring her wealth of knowledge to our group today. As we kind of go through our format, my plan is I'm going to give Connie some time to go through and do a little bit of a presentation. So she's going to present maybe a little bit more formally, but not so much. I feel free to reach out and ask questions as we're going through our conversation today. But I also want to let you know, feel free to give lots of questions as we go through our chat, because we will have a time where we wrap up our presentation with Connie, and we've got a few special guests on the call today, who I'm going to, as soon as Connie's wrapped up with her content, we'll go ahead and open it up to a little bit of a panel type of discussion where we'll answer any questions that we've got coming in off the chat, as well as any one-off questions from our people that are listening in. So that's that. I think that's all I wanted to share as my pre-content. Oh, Lisa, I was just talking about you. Anyway, she's back. I'm so excited to have you on. And I think it's Lisa from South Africa. Anyway, yeah, and it's fun. So while we're jumping in and getting Connie all situated, why don't you guys go ahead and pop in where you are calling in from? Because a handful of you, I won't be able to go through and hear all the introductions like I like to sometimes, but go ahead and just pop in. Where are you from and what's the temperature? That's fun. And Connie, let's go ahead and turn the floor over to you. I'm going to give you a spotlight, and you will be able to share your screen whenever you are ready to.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, it's so wonderful to be able to speak to you guys and to be invited. I'm grateful for Aseneth reaching out to me. We stay connected on social media. I don't think we've had lunch for probably 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer, but it's like we've known each other for so long. It's like we just sat down yesterday. I have been building mentor programs for companies for the past 15 years or so. And I work with all industries, from food service industry to higher education to financial advisors, banking, engineering. So the program itself applies to any industry, not just to a specific women's program, although I do develop just women's programs. I develop joint programs, men-women programs for companies. But I've had a lot of interest lately in programs just for women. And the reason, I know we've got a mixed audience here today, and that's great, but the reason I think we're seeing more and more requests, at least from me, to put together women's mentor programs is women aren't finding those people in the top seats at their companies that are filled by women, so they don't have a role model to follow there. But that aside, I think the best mentor programs are just general neutral. I mean, it doesn't matter who your mentor is or who the mentees are. A couple of things that I wanted to cover today for you, though, was how to become a mentee. And I think that's what gets in the way for a lot of people. They in their brain, they say, you know, I'd really like to have a mentor, or I'd really like to mentor somebody. But they don't know how to become a mentee or a mentor. And I'm going to start off with the mentee part. And I think the most important thing for a mentee to realize is that this is not coaching and this is not training. Think about that, because a lot of times we go into mentoring thinking, you know, it's a coach or a trainer. That is not what mentoring is. Mentoring is finding an expert in the skills that you want to learn more about. Now, those skills might be in your line of business. They might be in the coding arena. Maybe you want to have more professional speaking skills. Maybe you need to understand marketing a little better in order to do what you do, or launch your own business, or be a bigger player in the company you're in. Maybe you need to understand the financial side of the business, and that isn't something you have a strong skill set for. It's not a bad thing. It's just that thing in your gut that you know you'd like to learn more about. That's the first step for mentors, is really sitting down and understanding, what is it I want to learn more about? Not just, I'd like to go get a mentor, because if you do that, you're out there chasing windmills. You don't know what you're after. You don't know what you're trying to accomplish. And so first you kind of sit down and you do that soul searching of, what keeps me up at night? It could be related to your business, could be related to what you do for a living, or it could be some other thing. As I said before, it could be professional speaking. It could be, I want to feel more confident when I walk into a room of strangers. It could be, I need to understand this piece of the business before I can take the next step in what I'm doing. Once you've done that, or once you've sat down with yourself, pour yourself a cup of coffee and sit down and have that good old conversation, that's when you become a real devoted mentee. Now you know what it is that you want to learn more about. Now, I hope you can see, I'm going to lead you through this here in a minute, but I hope you can see, once you understand that, it's sort of that reverse of, once the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's once the mentee is ready, once you know what it is you want to learn more about or add to your skill set, the mentor will then appear for you. And the other thing before I leave this point that I want to make is, it isn't about making you a better coder, or it isn't about you making a better industry professional in what you're doing right now. It's really about honing your skill set so you are a more confident, show up, capable adult to participate in that organization, in your own company, in your own business, because you now have these skills that you didn't otherwise have when you sat down and did that soul searching. So one of the things that, as you're going through this process, once you sit down with yourself and you're thinking about what it is that you want to focus on, one of the questions you want to ask yourself, and write this down, please, what do you want to be different when this process is done? Think about that. Once I am a mentee and I have gone out and I know what I'm going to do and I know what I want to focus on, I went out and found a mentor. What is it I want to be different when this is done? That's really crucial, because how do you know you've created success? How do you know you've been successful in this devoted time you've put into the mentoring process? Oh, before I go on, I'm not good at watching the chat if you're asking me questions in chat. So Aseneth, you might have to heads up me on that one.
So here's how the chat's going right now. There's some things that you're saying and I'm writing them down in notes. You definitely don't need to be paying attention to the chat.
Okay.
So just keep going. And if there is something, I'll flag you and stop you.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so back to what do you want to be different when this is over with? And I'm going to talk about how long should a mentorship program be? You also want to ask yourself, can you devote the time to yourself to engage in a mentoring process? Because it's not easy. I'm going to make it easier for you here as we go along, but this isn't easy. You need to be able to devote 2 hours a month for 6 months. I recommend in all the mentor programs I set up, run for a 6-month formal time period. People ask me all the time, how long should this last? Well, in my research, in my real life experience, a year is too long, although the mentoring engagement, the mentoring relationship goes on forever. But the formal process of addressing your goals goes on for 6 months, and you meet twice a month, an hour each. So you're devoting 2 hours a month. That's 12 hours a month, or 12 hours in 6 months that you're devoting to yourself. So you need to make sure that you are devoted and capable of doing that. One of the things that I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to try doing this right now, share the screen, and I want to share some. This is a simple goal setting worksheet. So when I talked about setting goals for yourself, when you sit down with yourself and say, what do you want to be different? Once you understand that, you can put down these goals. It's not complicated. And that's one of the things that people do to themselves when they start mentor programs. They over-engineer the program. They put so many forms out there and so many documents, and they make it so complicated that it takes all the fun out of mentoring. And so my worksheets, everything that I produce is very, very simple. And this is an example of a goal setting worksheet that I use with every single client, no matter how big or small the client is. My Raymond James client uses this, and my smallest 3-person office uses this. So what it is, you can see at the top, mentor name and mentee's name, but you start with your goals and you put down 3 goals, not 10, 3. That's how many goals you start with. So it's a very simple goal. It doesn't have to be a dissertation that you use. You put down your goal, and then you put down 3 success measures. How do you know, or how will you feel when that goal is accomplished? Otherwise, how do you know you're done? How do you know you've accomplished it if you don't understand what success looks like for you, right? So I share that with you just to let you see how simple it is. It doesn't have to be complicated. And if I can send these out to you guys after the fact, I'm happy to do that. You can contact me and I can send these documents or any document I have out to you. But this is the one that is just so simple to sit down with and say, here's the 3 things I want to focus on over the next 6 months. Questions on that? Okay. Now, once you have gone through this goal setting process for yourself and you understand what skill sets you want to focus on and what you want to get out of a mentor program, now you can start looking for a mentor. And I have people tell me all the time, this is really difficult. Who do I go to? Where do I look for that mentor? If you don't know someone that has expertise in those areas or those 3 goals that you've laid out for yourself, start asking your friends, start asking colleagues, start asking former professors who they know. Don't ask these people if they'll be your mentor because they might not have those skill sets, but ask them, you know what, I've got 3 goals that I want to focus on. It's all about building my business, or it's all about creating professionalism, or it's all about understanding financials or marketing, or whatever it is you come up with. That's all you have to do is lay it out simply and then ask friends, ask colleagues, ask your former professors at school. Ask someone in your place of worship who they might know that could act as a mentor for you. It's really all about who do they know. And that's how you go about finding a mentor. There's not a bank of mentors out there that I know of. But I can tell you, if I needed to understand coding a little bit better, because I understand nothing, but maybe if I started I'm going to give you an example here. If I had a contract with a company that was a major coding sort of an organization, I know nothing about that. I don't need to know a lot about it, but I would need to know 2 or 3 things that I would put down on this goal worksheet. Who would I call? I would call a Senate. Or I would look at this list of people on this call and I would call any one of you and say, hey, I've got to learn a little bit more about this. Who do you know in the industry that could help me? That's not hard to do. You just have to think about, what do I want to gain? What skill sets do I want to build upon? And then go look at the resources you have available to start identifying that mentor. And maybe you don't find a mentor that has all of those skill sets, but they have enough of the skill sets that you want to learn about. You decide that's the perfect mentor. They can then, and we're going to talk about that, introduce you to shadow opportunities and subject matter experts. Okay.
I really love that, Connie. And just to kind of reaffirm, like you brought out in the very beginning of the conversation, like it's really good to understand what you're trying to achieve and where you personally see that. I actually think that's the most influential part of the whole conversation, is trying to understand where you're headed. And then, you know, I'm thinking to myself going, sometimes mentoring is like this big amalgamous thing and we don't know where to start and we don't know who to reach out to. And how do I find, what if I know the mentor? What if I don't know anybody who could fill that gap? As you start to hone in, then you start to realize, wait a minute, I know a person who might know somebody that could help me or could help me as well. But anyway, I just really wanted to drive that home a little bit more. So anyway, keep going. Thank you.
Okay, great. Now you hit on a very good point. A lot of times you might not know the mentor. Somebody might introduce you, give you a warm introduction to somebody, and you're going to have to step out of a comfort zone. We all do. I still, as much public speaking as I do, and as much out there in the world I am training and doing these kinds of things, when I have to call up somebody I've never met before, that's not comfortable for me, but I do it. And because I've done it before and I know I'm not going to die, you know, you just know it's not going to kill you. It might not be comfortable, but so, you know, you make that phone call and ask them and let them know, hey, I've got some goals. I've set some success measures for myself, and I'd really like to talk to you about being a mentor. I can guarantee you almost no one says no, especially when you come prepared with, here's the things I want to address. When mentors back away, it's because the mentee is like, well, I really don't know. And I just think I need a mentor, but I just don't know what I really need or want to talk about. Or they're like, yeah, I'm too busy for this. But when they've got somebody that's already set down 3 goals for themselves and said, this is what I want to focus on, they're more likely to say yes. And before diving in with both feet and saying, let's attack these goals, my advice to you is, first, establish a foundation of trust and relationship with that person. Your first meeting or 2 might just be getting to know each other. And isn't that how we learn from each other the best? We get to know each other. We sit down, we have that virtual cup of coffee if your mentor is not in your same geographic area. Because I do mentor programs all the time where no one's in the same zip code, but they figure out how to mentor across geography, and they do it very, very well. And it's not just because of COVID. I've been doing it that way long before COVID ever came about. So you start sharing that foundation, or you start sharing stories and build that foundation of trust, because that's your springboard to even deeper conversations down the line. And let me give you an example of what that conversation might sound like. Mentees generally want to know that you're a real person and that you have struggled too, and you've gotten back up. And so it's more than just sharing all your stories of success. The story might start and sound like this. You know, I fell in a pothole the other day. I didn't see it coming, but it really tripped me up, and I didn't think I was ever going to recover. But I reached out to someone else, and they were able to give me some tips and tricks and tools to avoid those potholes in the future. And now when I go down that same road, I'm bobbing and weaving and I don't hit any potholes. So that sharing up front becomes story time, really, of tell me what the situation was, tell me how you felt about the situation, tell me how you recovered from the situation, and how did you move forward. Now you can take that to the success discussion as well. Here's the success I had. Here's what I did in order to create that success. Here's how I handled the success. And here's what I did to pass it along to the next person. So a lot of times I find that mentors and mentees get tangled up in, ooh, we just don't know how to start engaging. But trust me, this sharing stories up front of just, it might be stories about school, it might be stories about the industry, it might be stories about life, it might be stories about your kids, your dogs, the last trip you were on, whatever. But you start building that camaraderie and that feeling you're both in this together, and you both had some of the same experiences that you can relate to. And all of a sudden, the next conversations you're going to have for the next 6 months just explode. I mean, it goes all over the place. And that's where the real rich exchange of information comes in. All right. The next thing I want to talk to you about is some best practices. Now, I'm doing this in about 20 minutes, and I know I've got to hurry. I just have a few more things I want to go over, and then I'll turn it back over to you. Okay. But I do want to go over some best practices. And what I want to tell you right now, though, is I do this training. My mentor program training is a 4-hour in-person training, classroom training on how to be a mentor, how to be a mentee, the characteristics of mentors and mentees, how to engage, how to set your schedules. We go through a whole breakout session on setting the goals, and they leave the room with goals set, blah, blah, blah. So I'm giving you some real highlights here of what makes a good mentor program. There's a lot more data that I have and can send or talk to you about offline. Anyway, best practices. Follow the goal worksheet. You're going to go through a mentorship program for 6 months, and at about the 4th month, this is what I always hear. Gosh, we kind of ran out of things to talk about. I don't know, we're kind of digging for things to talk about. And the first thing I say is, when was the last time you reviewed the goal worksheet that the mentee pulled out or the mentee designed in the first place? Oh yeah, we should go back to that. And I'm like, yeah, you should probably go back to that. Always follow that goal worksheet. Always have it in front of you. If you've got a folder that you're bringing to the table, have that in the forefront of the folder, and always look at those goals and make sure you're on target to talk about the little aspects of each of those goals every time you meet. Set aside that time to meet. My number one best practice is, and this comes from the mentees in every program I ever run, set it as a reoccurring appointment on your calendar every 2 weeks. You guys all know how to do that. Pick a day. Thursdays at 2:00. I know you might have time zones that you have to negotiate. That's fine. Pick a time and set it as a reoccurring appointment for the next 6 months. There, now it's on your calendar. What happens then? Things drop in around it instead of you trying to grab time in all your busy schedules. Ask for introductions to subject matter experts from your mentor. Say you want to learn more about marketing because you want to start out on your own and you need to understand how to build a marketing plan. Maybe that isn't the skill set your mentor has, but they probably know somebody in the industry that has marketing experience. And it makes the experience with your mentor that much richer because they're bringing subject matter experts in. I always suggest meet with a subject matter expert at least once a month or once every other month during the whole 6-month process. Mentees, if you're a mentee, put an agenda together each time you meet. And that It doesn't have to be a long drawn out agenda. It might be 3 bullet points in an email. Hey, mentor, here's the 3 things I'd like to talk about this time. You know what that does for the mentor? They go, oh, thank you. Thank you. That gives my brain something to start thinking about, something to start collecting things together that I want to share with you, blah, blah, blah. Do yourselves a favor. Just put 3 bullet points in an email, send it as the agenda. Ask for candid feedback from the mentor. And mentors, when you're working with a mentee, you're doing a lot of listening. So if you're acting as a mentor, you really need to listen to that mentee, listen to what they're saying, and listen to what it is they want to get out of the program around their goals. One final thing, well, it's not the final. I have a final for you, but get comfortable being uncomfortable sometimes. Sometimes that's the best growth experience we have, right? And that's not to say being a mentee, you're going to get beat up on. That's not what this is about at all. Remember establishing that foundation of trust that I first talked about? It's like you're now mentoring with a best friend. And when I need candid feedback, I don't go to a stranger. I go to my best friend and say, hey, what do you think about the nose on my face? You still like it? I mean, that's what a best friend is for, right? And at the end of the day, you guys are going to love this, especially this coding group. Somebody in one of my classes once said to me, you know, mentoring is all about that shit you can't Google, isn't it? And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm stealing that line. And I change it. And normally I say, mentoring is all about that stuff you can't Google to make it more politically correct. But really, isn't that what it is? The stuff that you're looking for is up here. It's in people's heads. It's in their experiences. It's not on the internet. We can't Google a mentoring experience. It just can't be done. And with that, I turn it back to you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I absolutely love that. Yes, Stephanie's got it right. So good. So there's a lot of highlights. I pulled a lot of them in the chat. So that's what I was doing as I'd mentioned, just kind of calling out some of the pieces that you went over. We didn't get a lot of questions so far, which is fine. I am filled with questions myself. I think I mentioned that to you earlier today. And if I didn't, well, I'm telling you now, I have lots of questions. As we kind of transition into the second half, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of introductions for those guys who haven't met the next 2 people that I'm putting on spotlight with you, Connie. We've got Martina Schallenberg. She actually came on to our conversation last month, and she was incredible talking. And here I'm like, what were we talking about again, Martina?
We are talking about back-end versus front-end engineering.
That's right.
Back-end cool and deserves a little bit more appreciation. Not talking down on front-end, but we need both to work.
Right. So that's funny. So we're talking about back end versus front end and the magic that happens. It's funny because it has been such a busy day. And anyway, my brain totally went blank. So thank you. So Martina is the director of software engineering for a company called Myriad Genetics in Salt Lake City. So she comes to us with a wealth of knowledge and experience inside of the coding and software engineering world, but also has a wealth of experience inside of the mentoring conversation. So I'm really excited to have her on to do a little bit of Q&A and talk a little bit about that as well. And then we've got a gentleman named Brad Baird. He's fairly new. I don't know him super well, but the little bit I do know about him, I'm feeling just such a sweet kinship with him. As we've had a few conversations up to this point, he has a lot of passion with bringing people into the fold and into conversations, very specifically women. Brad he's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Dependable IT Solutions. So he's very much in the technology space. And he's just right now just killing it. He's doing such a good job getting his business off the ground. But as I mentioned, some of the things that we've talked about up to this point, just let me know that he's definitely one of those allies, and we all need a few of those in our court. And I might get the question, like, we're women who code and we've got a guy on our call. One thing I mentioned to him earlier today is I am a huge, I love the conversations that go around feminism and bringing a stronger voice to women. And I also love men. And I think that we don't have enough men inside of these critical conversations where a lot of change does happen. So anyway, like I said, Brad is definitely an ally in our court, and he's up to big things in the world. So anyway, without any further, I have a question to get things kind of rolling on our panel. And I really do encourage you, if you don't want to send the question out to the whole group, feel free to send it to me and I'll go ahead and ask the questions, however you feel most comfortable getting these questions going. Let's see, okay, Aliska, got your question. That's great. So the first question I'd actually like to start. So Connie, just to kind of like go through a quick little thing on you and give us a different perspective. You talked a lot about structure and having things kind of lined out so we have some clear expectations. We've got some formal boundaries, very professional kind of setup. And one thing I know Martina is really excited about is maybe some of the how to go about a little bit less formal. So we've got a really great perspective from you. And by the way, I will have you send over some of that, like even just that spreadsheet or that document. I'll post it in the meetup for this event so that everybody has access. But anyway, I wanted to turn it over to Martina for just a quick moment. Martina, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about some of the experience that you bring with the not so formal mentoring relationships. So I'll turn it over to you for a minute.
Thanks, Cece. So I've actually just recently joined the formal Myriad mentorship program for the whole company. We actually have two, one for our tech org, one for the formal one. But up until this point, all my mentoring experience as a mentor or mentee have been very organic and natural, where you kind of build up a friendship, you kind of figure out what you need, and because you get to know these people, you find out what skills that they have that you can kind of suck off of them, right? That came out terrible. You can kind of absorb them by spending time with them, and you don't necessarily in those organic relationship tend to call them mentors or mentees. They're just your friends that specialize in something, and then you feel more comfortable using it. And I've noticed that the more formal we tend to make these relationships, the more stressful they become. Like you put more pressure on it be prepared, and there isn't as much time for that personal connection. So I really, really appreciated, Connie, you calling out that like your first two meetings, like you can totally just spend them getting to know each other, because you really can't benefit from a mentor if you don't really know them personally. You don't know what they're good at. And then the other thing with these formal mentorship programs that keep popping up, there is this mentality, I feel like, that in your career you need a mentor, and there is never a precedent of like, I have goals and therefore I need help. It's I need a mentor and then I figure out what I want, which is a little bit backwards. So like, I really thought it was great, Connie, that you brought up that like, you need to know what you want, so you know who you look for. And then it doesn't limit you. It doesn't mean you have to have one mentor to rule them all and they solve like this one problem, because that's like finding that perfect human being that has all your answers, right? You want to find finances. So I work with a guy in our finance department at Myriad that helps me figure out what a revenue recognition date is, right?
Right.
And then I have another one who's been my dear friend for a decade that helps me not say stupid things like suck off on a public call. Would have probably kicked me in the shin by now, but that is what comes from this organic establishing of mentorship, which we tend to overlook because we get these formal sessions and we want to make the most of them. So we tend to just jump in directly into getting feedback and getting
Right.
help, but not so much growth. And like, it'd be great if we could have those and help make those connections, but really emphasize like the personal connection and getting to know each other, and that trust factor is a huge part of mentorship.
Well, and
the answers.
Martina, I didn't want to interrupt you there, but I just wanted to reinforce that's why I designed the mentor program the way I did. I'm a corporate America animal. I've been in corporate America up until up until 2013 when I left it. They over-engineered everything, and every mentor program or every officer training program or every management training program eventually failed. It failed. It fell off everybody's radar. Everybody wondered where it went. You know, all the balloons and the t-shirts and the candy that they threw out when they started it were all gone. And I sat back and I looked at it and I said, you're doing this wrong. You're trying to over-engineer it. You're trying to over-structure it. They don't want a bunch of forms to fill out. And you're not focusing on the mentee. You're more focused on the mentor saying, oh, you've risen to this high level. You must have wisdom. And I'm like, that's not how we do this. And as soon as high level executives can kind of relax and let go of that, oh, I've got to measure everything. How do you measure it? I got to measure it. And the only way I can measure it is to give them another form. I'm like, relax, let go of that. And I can tell you, they will create success. Every team will create success individually in a different way. And that's okay. So you could be a spokesperson for this.
And there is, I think this kind of relates to, I've recently read some management books and articles about the part where bringing your true self to work. And there's a Harvard Business Review recently, I think, had an article about friendship at work and how people actually need to foster friendship with their coworkers, making them more productive, which has been up till recently a very touchy subject at especially corporate America, right? This is not your fears with the ability to become a mentor and having a mentor relationship. You have to really break down that barrier because, like you said, you're looking for the things you can't Google. And I love that. And I'm stealing it shamelessly.
Yes,
and I'm
do
going
it.
to produce it everywhere. It's brilliant. You can't, you have to bring if you can Google it, then like you don't have to have a friendship, right? You'll just go Google it. It's the breaking down and getting down to the like the meat of
Right.
these issues that really is the core of mentorship.
Exactly.
Yeah, so good. So good. So I'm going to kind of do a little spin off of what we're talking about here, and bring up another question and I'm going to throw this one at Brad. So we're talking about some really interesting pieces, having friendships at work, having formal versus informal mentorship relationships. But I'd really like to hear Brad's take on some of the psychology / the things that happen behind the scenes inside somebody as they're going through this, and how to kind of mold this type of conversation to fit you best.
Thanks. So first off, I'll start off. I feel weird being in a room with all women as well. So I believe all of you are going to inspire me to do more things and think radically different. So I'm here to be inspired by all of you. So I think, and actually this kind of ties with Aliska. That's how you say your name, I hope.
Aliska, yeah.
Aliska. So to your question, and kind of the informal aspect, I think a lot of the mentorship really needs to be organic. So if you're struggling to go to a one-on-one with your manager, think about the last time you were uncomfortable, right? So to Connie's point, right, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And chances are that discomfort came from a failure. You missed a deadline, you didn't produce at a certain point, right? Those feelings of discomfort is, either triggering shame or who knows what the emotion is or could be. But if you have that relationship, as both Connie and Martina have said already, Without that relationship, right, you're not going to necessarily trust what they say, but with that relationship, you can say, hey, I failed. This didn't happen. This is how I felt. This is how I perceived it. And hopefully that person can then, you know, to Connie's point, right, correlate a story of their own. Hey, this is when I had a similar type thing happen. And, you know, provides you with a little bit of validation. Everyone believes that validation is this negative thing. You shouldn't need validation. But like, come on, let's be real. We all need validation. So, you know, having someone that you look up to, they're a mentor for a reason, tell you, hey, I've screwed up too. I've been there. It's not the same, but here's how I handled it. And that really helps calm it's just me. I'm the only person that's failed. And then you can come up with creative ideas, right, with the mentor to find ways around that particular thing. But ultimately, having that presence of mind to understand when you are uncomfortable and what made you uncomfortable, those are some of the biggest learning points. If you haven't read Brene Brown's work, her work has been radically inspiring for me, and I think has really helped guide and make me a better mentor, because it focuses a lot on the psychology. And, you know, shame and vulnerability are two of the number one things that prevent people from becoming successful. And so, you know, a friend at work, I don't know, that's hard to say, but trust is, you know, the people I trust most. So Stephanie is my right-hand person. Her title is Dream Fulfillment Goddess, right? There was no reason for that other than she's helping me build a company. And it happens to be that we're doing IT, but I want to build the company to build people. And so Stephanie is my dream fulfillment goddess, and she's going to help me and other people provide an avenue to fulfill dreams, right? None of that's going to happen without vulnerability and, you know, overcoming the shame of saying I failed. Anyway, so hopefully that provides a little bit of direction for you and answers your questions.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I'm going to take that a little bit, one step, and maybe this is a little bit more tactical. As we've got about 10 more minutes on our call, I want to really talk about some of the tactics. Connie, you did a really great job bringing up, and I'll just kind of reaffirm, you talked a little bit about coming up with a little bit of a plan. What do I want to accomplish? How do I know it's successful? What is it going to feel like when I've met my goals? Starting to identify where you might find that person or somebody that would fit that kind of characteristic. And then maybe some of the conversation that goes along with asking. Martina, you've talked about maybe identifying some of those people at work, formal or informal relationships, friendships, or more professional acquaintances. And Brad, you reaffirmed that. And also like being vulnerable to let yourself kind of, all by itself, just being vulnerable to identify where improvement can be made. So as we go into like a little bit more tactical, I'd love to hear like 3 bullet points from each one of you guys on, probably the best question is, I've never had a mentor and I'm excited to find a mentor. What are the 3 best things you could do today to get started before the end of the day? Connie, you go first.
Oh, thanks. All right. The first thing you need to do before the end of the day, sit down and have that quiet conversation with yourself. What keeps me up at night? What's sticking like a rock in my gut that I want to learn more about? And it could be the finances, the marketing, professionalism. It could be some coding, engineering. I don't know your world, but what is it that is keeping you up at night? And maybe it's not even related to work. Maybe it's something entirely different. That could be a different kind of mentor. So sit down and set those 3 goals for yourself. Second, understand if you really have the time to do this, and that you really have a desire and a commitment to dedicate the time, because it's not easy. It's hard work, but out of hard work comes very good things. We all know that. But you need to really say, you know what? I don't have the time right now, but I'm going to start in January. Or you bet, I got the time right now. I'm starting November 1st. So really have the time. And trust that you have the resources to find that mentor, whether you're an independent and you're out there in your own little office and you're all by yourself, or you're in a big company like Myriad Genetics. You will have the resources to identify that mentor in a formal program or in a less formal program. If it's just you working alone, trust that you will find the resource, because I think that's what gets in the way of so many people not taking that first step. Who am I going to ask? You don't know who you're going to ask until you set those goals.
So good. Okay, go ahead, Brad. What are your 3 bullet points that you would say I'm getting started with today before the end of the day?
I'm going to take just a slightly different approach. I think that initial first step is always the hardest part. So if you're floundering, trying to even find what are those goals, you know, what is your direction in life? I'm still trying to figure out my career path. Earmuffs, Steph. If that's where you're struggling, because there's a trillion options out there, and especially in coding and programming, right? There's unlimited possibilities, right? So trying to come up with those goals may be difficult. So I would say, number 1, ask your closest friend, family member, whoever, somebody that you know will tell you, hey, you suck at this. You are really good at this.
Yep.
Right? Somebody you trust enough that they will shoot you straight, right? And ask them what your strengths are and what they perceive that you are passionate about. Because those 2 things will really help. Number 1, you kind of have that mindfulness that like, oh yeah, I do really enjoy this. It's really intrinsically fulfilling. I think based off of that conversation, at a minimum, you can narrow the field down from 360 degrees to 90 degrees maybe, right? From there, use that feedback from your friend, a little bit of just internal analysis, right? And choose kind of a general direction, your goal, and start down that path with those goals. Once you have a generic goal, right, make $1 million, design a new application, whatever. Bring more gratitude to the back-end developers, right? I agree with you. The back-end developers kind of just disappear. It's kind of like the IT support staff, right? When there's a problem, you're the
We
worst
only
enemy.
get a phone call when something's broken.
Yep. Yep. You're the most hated enemy when it's broken, and nobody gives a damn when you're not, when it's working. So, so find, use that information and help come up with a goal, whether it's I don't remember the author, but he calls it a WAG, right? A wild ass goal. Right, whatever that is, and then use that to then tailor it down to find the next step to reach out and find that mentor. Hopefully that is good enough 3 bullet points.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Okay, Martina, what about you? Your 3 bullet.
So I'm gonna approach this from for the people who might not know their goals and not like they feel like they want to grow, but they're not sure about how or where. And my advice on that, I don't know if I'll come up with 3 because I'm following 2 really smart people that already threw out some good things. But find somebody in your work or in your professional life who you aspire to, or who you even think is just cool. Like you look at them and they're like, I don't know what they do, but like they seem to have their act together. They seem to know what they're doing, or that's like a senior software engineer that you're like, oh, they know everything and I really want to learn from them. And don't approach it as like, I want you to be my mentor, like knock, knock, can you be my mentor? Because that's kind of awkward, but get to know them. So point 1, like find that one person that you, for whatever reason, is cool. You don't necessarily have to be like them, but want to be like them, but there's something inspirational about them. And then make a goal that you're going to approach that person and actually talk to them. Like put that fear aside. The worst thing that can happen is that they're having a bad day and they don't want to talk to you right now. But you can leave it open like, hey, I know you're busy. I would really love to, find out more about what you do, what you work. Software engineers love to talk about their code. That's your in right there. So yeah, like find that one person and just make that first step. And maybe it won't make them your mentor, but it can allow you for 2 things. It can get you into start thinking and actually exploring with another person what you might be interested in. And they might actually point you to a different person, right? You might go to this backend engineer and they'll start talking to you about API building and how their passion is really in site and reliability engineering and SRE, right? And you're like, oh, but then they'll mention, oh, but you know, Sue over there does really awesome front end. And then you can find that path that way. So start small, not necessarily just going straight for the mentor, but maybe to somebody, up to somebody you admire, and just get to know them and see what they have to offer that you might help you grow and might help you figure out how you want to grow.
Now that's such a good one. And I think just having those conversations is so powerful, just to develop a perspective, you know, and allies within your company, within your group. So mentorship set aside for just that one moment, like it's so powerful. Those relationships are powerful long term. Okay, so my last question, and this is kind of maybe it's just a little bit of a fire round. We haven't done a lot of conversation for this call around being a mentor. And just as an aside, I did a quick little survey as the people, you know, as everybody was signing up for today's event, I said, are you looking for a mentor? And another part of the survey is I have asked people, are you looking to mentor someone else? And it's a mixed bag. Most people coming onto the call today are looking for a mentor. I know a lot of people who have been in the industry for some time, software engineering, who are now to a point where they are ready to grow in a different way, and they're looking for opportunities to be that mentor. So my question to you guys, being seasoned, amazing folks who are so smart and capable, my question for you is, as you think about new people who are maybe shy or nervous or afraid of getting told no, what are some of the benefits of being a mentor? Just to kind of set ease the fears of our mentees, our wannabe people looking for mentors. What's some of the perks, the favorite things that you've experienced along your way? And let's go ahead and start with you, Martina.
I just personally love watching people grow. I don't think anybody ever gets offended when you come up to them and ask them questions about how they got where they are and how they do the things that they do every day. They might be busy at that moment, but deep down inside, finding a mentor is you start trying to get to know that person, and everybody loves to talk about themselves, especially me. So it, like, to ease down your fears is it's really, even people that don't like to be mentors, they'll at least engage. Like the biggest thing is helping guide people into their own and into their own solutions, and then watch them have that, like, I did it moment. You know, that it's really great. That's my favorite part of mentoring and you know, leading and just working with other humans.
That's wonderful. Okay, what about you, Brad? What is a favorite takeaway of mentoring somebody along their path?
So very, very similar. I love watching people get the light bulb or advance their careers. I've helped multiple people more than double their salaries, right? And it radically changes their life. And you know, hearing a colleague get an offer that's double what they were getting paid is just as exciting for me to hear as it is for them to actually receive that kind of an offer. So it's definitely very intrinsically gratifying for me. For those that are maybe nervous to be a mentor, all anyone ever has is our own perspectives. So even if you don't think that you have something to offer, your perspective on the same thing that they may be asking you about could be radically different. And it can help you see something from a different angle that you maybe just have never thought about before. So, you know, whether you are uncomfortable asking a mentor to provide you guidance, or uncomfortable being a mentor, gaining that additional perspective or providing that additional perspective is incredibly valuable. So everyone has something to offer.
Oh, that is so powerful. I am so grateful that you brought that up. Just that one is, it's such key. Everybody just has their own perspective. And one thing I like to always think about is I don't actually know everything, and I never will, but I might know, 2 or 3 things ahead of you. Like I might be just a little tiny bit ahead of you, and that's enough to make a world of difference for someone. So it's a powerful thing. So, okay. So Connie, first stop with you and last stop. What is your biggest takeaway as a mentor? Or last thing you want to share?
And I have a little bit different perspective on this. I have worked with over 1,000 mentors nationwide over the last 10 years. And one of the things that always rings true in the surveys we do after the fact is mentors will say, I learned as much from the mentee as I think I taught them. The reverse mentoring that goes on, and we don't even set that up, that just organically happens. But mentors will say, are as grateful for the experience of being a mentor as the mentee is for being a mentee. And they will say, I learned so much from my mentee. And they don't necessarily, some of them use the terminology reverse mentoring because in the industry, that's what it is. But they'll say, I learned so much from the mentee. I think I learned more than I taught them. And they're grateful for that experience and that exchange, because especially if there's a real difference, if we've got somebody that's, been in a business for 50 years, and I'm thinking about the financial services industry right now, they've been in the business for 50 years at Raymond James. They've got a wealth of investment knowledge. But that new person coming in, or that five-year tenured employee, they've got all the technical, social media, marketing, all of this stuff that 50-year veteran doesn't have. And that 50-year veteran, as Martina said, they're just sucking it up. They're just, because they don't know. So that reverse mentoring, I think, is the most valuable for a mentor.
Oh, so good. Oh my gosh, you guys have shared just such gems on our call today. I appreciate each one of you so much. Thank you, Connie, and of course for our continued friendship. And we may be far away, but I'm not going to let it go that long again for a virtual Zoom coffee here. And Martina, I keep thinking you and I need to have one. And before we go, by the way, happy birthday to you. Oh. It's her birthday today. I just really had to call it out. I know it's a big one
today.
It's a big one. It's now going to get really fun for you, because guess what?
Yeah, my back's already hurting. I'm excited.
I was going to go the other direction. You now get to take yourself a little less seriously, which I don't think you have a problem with that anyway, but just think of like having more fun. Like that's what I've decided anyway. So happy birthday. And
thank you. And you as well, because that was a couple earlier this week, right?
Yeah, last week. It was last week. So yeah, it's a birthday month. October's a great month. But and yes, thank you so much, Brad. And by the way, we did have another gentleman on the call. And we do regularly. We get gentlemen on the calls, and it's always encouraging, because I think so much of the content we talk about, it does apply to everyone. And the more we share and express that gratitude for everyone who comes to the table, the better off we're all going to be. So I really appreciate you, Brad. And I look forward to continuing to get to know you better and finding ways to collaborate. And like I said, I just appreciate you so much. So with all that being said, I appreciate everybody for being on the call today and on our webinar today. I think that's what you'd call it, our Zoom chat, our meetup. I could go on. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys. I'm going to post a couple of resources back in that meetup. So resources to connect with Connie. Also, I do know inside of our Women Who Code, there are some mentorship programs that are being formalized. I can't make any announcements yet. I can't talk about it too much. But I would love to get you into the loop on that as soon as it happens. So make sure that, well, I'm not sure the best way to do it. Maybe just ping me personally on Meetup, or find me on LinkedIn. I'll post my LinkedIn on the Meetup channel as well, so that we can connect. And let me know if you're interested in being part of that group as Women Who Code launches the mentorship. And yes, that includes you too, Brad. I'd love to have you participate there. So anyway, without any further, I really appreciate everybody. Have a great Thursday afternoon. And as we get into a cool weekend, stay warm, lots of sweaters. And yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Emily.
Bye.